Will some team please sign some free agents? I'm tired of some of these topics.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I have been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now. God, it's been 12 years, something crazy like that. All I know is I'm starting my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and we're just about a month away from the first regular season games, which are it's not really opening day, but it's going to be the first regular season games. It's weird. I'm not a huge fan when they do it like that, but hey, what do I know? You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever the hell Twitter is called now. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And please subscribe to us, like to us on all the YouTube channels and everything. You can follow us. And if you are going to make any posts on social media, put that hashtag Everyday Sully. Where is that? There it is, Everyday Sully. So we know who's watching us and listening to us every single day. Quick note about today's show. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. The other day, we talked a little bit about free agency and the whole Anthony Rendon situation and contracts. And in the second part of today's show, we are going to talk a little bit about the reactions to yesterday's show, because some of you wrote a few things, and I want to address some of it. And on the third part of today's show, we're going to be talking about someone who retired, who is a fine player, who helped rescue one franchise and helped absolutely devastate two others. And he's certainly worth a salute as he's wrapping his wonderful career up. Hey, let's go to the trivia question that I did yesterday, which was, in all of the free agent history, when free agency began in earnest in the mid to late 1970s, who was the first player who received a 10-year contract out of free agency? A couple of you got it right. Scott Horsmeyer was one of the ones who said, I Googled it. Good for you for admitting that you kind of cheated. The answer is Wayne Garland. Wayne Garland's had a fine year with the Baltimore Orioles, signed a 10-year deal after the 76 season with the Cleveland Indians. And it was a bust. It was a complete busteroonie. And it's a shame because Garland, he's a major league pitcher, and he's always going to be associated with being the first multi-million-dollar bust like that. So good job there, Scott. I'm going to get into some of the YouTube comments that I got for yesterday's show, and some of you, I'm not lining up with all of what you're saying, but I will respect people's opinions. By the way, my favorite response that I got, I mentioned this the other day, Alan Shilford saying he won't vote for me as commissioner. For those of you who are new, I am throwing my hat in the ring. And yes, vote for Sully, baseball commissioner for a change is still valid. But he said he won't vote for me because I'm for having games end in a tie after 12 innings. I respect that. I said he's a one-issue voter, and he responded, Alan Shilford said, I'm a no game should end in a tie voter. Fair enough. I can't please everybody here. I'm going to kind of please one listener here, at least try to. Logan Carpenter wrote on my YouTube page, or on this YouTube page, would I do a Trevor Bauer episode? No, not a whole episode. I don't think there's enough to talk about with Trevor Bauer for a whole episode. I did talk about Trevor Bauer earlier in the year, but here's the deal. I do hundreds of these episodes a year. I couldn't find the one where I talked about Trevor Bauer, and my thoughts about him haven't changed. And I'll just review him right now. And I've even put a Trevor Bauer thumbnail in case anyone wonders if I'm having my thoughts about him. I'm talking about in the first segment. Uh, we all know Trevor Bauer's story. He was a good pitcher for Cleveland, had a couple of very good years and a bunch of okay years. He won the Cy Young when he was with Cincinnati in the COVID years. We know that he had a history of being, let's just say punching down to a lot of people on Twitter and on all the social medias and sending a lot of his fans to harass some of the people who didn't care for him. He had a checkered background with women, but he's certainly not alone as an athlete in that regard. There were many allegations against him for sexual assault. And then when one of the cases was dropped, he sued for defamation. The person countersued, and both suits were dropped. That's not the same as being guilty, and it's not the same as being innocent. It means that he wasn't found guilty. However, if you read some of the reports, especially from Kelly Valencia, the forensic nurse examiner, who was talking about the bruises of one of his accusers, I'd just say it was enough to get him suspended from the domestic violence policy that Rob Manfred put up, and was enough for the Dodgers to say, bye. We don't need you here. He was suspended for a long time, obviously. He wound up playing overseas, and now he's trying to rehabilitate his image. He's done the whole non-apology, the sort of I was young and made mistakes. You were 30. And he's now wants to play in Major League Baseball again. He's in his 30s. He hasn't pitched in Major League Baseball for a few years. And Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Los Angeles all said goodbye to him in a short period of time. And none of those teams really seemed that sad to see him go, which is a bit of a red flag. But do I think he should come back? It's his right to. Sure, it's his right to. And baseball has brought back people with domestic violence backgrounds that are much more concrete than Trevor Bauer's. Aroldis Chapman got to be collect another World Series ring and became a millionaire again. Julio Urias came back, and that turned out to be a major mistake for the Dodgers, of course. And the likes of Stephen Wright, the pitcher for the Red Sox, he didn't get into real trouble when he was suspended for domestic violence, but then later he got real trouble for PEDs, which I guess I'm just going to leave it at that. And, they're the Brett Myers of the world, hell, the Bobby Coxes of the world all have, let's just say, not the cleanest of resumes. Trevor Bauer has the right to ask teams to have him come back. He served a suspension. Do I think a team should? Let me put it this way. It's going to be a circus. It's going to be a major distraction. Is it worth it for your team? Is it worth it for this pitcher to come back to your team to deal with this? And when someone has multiple accusers, that's not saying this is not a court of law. This is not you have to be proven guilty within the shadow of a doubt and with reasonable doubt and all this stuff. This isn't a court of law. This is a baseball team. And being a Major League Baseball player is not a right. So if I were running a team, I know it's going to be a circus if you bring him in. I know it's going to be nightmare publicity if you bring him in. I know that the questions and everything you're going to get are going to be a gigantic distraction for the team if you bring him in. And that's if the inevitable other shoe doesn't drop. There was a lot of people who knew something bad was going to happen when the Reds let him walk And I know many people who are diehard Mets fans who are doing everything but going to St. Patrick Cathedral and lighting candles, praying the Mets don't sign him because they knew the other shoe's going to eventually drop. He signed with LA. Boom. There's the shoe. Do you want to deal with that? If that game of musical chairs comes up and you've signed him and he's on your team and you've got to deal with that circus, is that worth it? Is that worth? We all know the publicity behind this is going to be checkered at best and disastrous at worst. And that's assuming another accuser doesn't come forward. That's assuming that he is not going to get any more legal trouble and that doesn't go further than what happened before that was worthy of a suspension of this size, of which he's now saying the whole, I've made mistakes. Oh, you've made mistakes. Interesting. It's not a mistake. It's a form of violence. But that being said, if I'm a team, I'm not touching him with a cattle prod. And to me, that's the end of the discussion. I mean, even just in a cold-hearted baseball sense, he's had a couple of elite seasons, and he hasn't pitched in Major League Baseball for a few years. You don't even know what you're getting. Even if you just want to be a cold-hearted baseball person and think, oh, he's going to help our team win, you're not sure of that. And also, you know it's going to be the kind of distractions that make you go, can we just get rid of this guy? Can we just get rid of this guy? You know, the way Cleveland eventually was like, we got to trade this guy out of here. The way the Reds were like, oh, no, don't go to free agency. And where the Dodgers, in a year where they were trying to defend a World Series title, were like, okay, this is no need to have him back. The Dodgers are in a situation where they are in World Series or bust. If the year ends where they don't win the World Series this year, it will be considered a failure, and they can use additional pitching depth. And they already have his uniform printed out, although they do now have those lousy-looking uniforms. It's not worth it. It's not worth the headache. It just isn't. It's not worth the potential of disaster because the best-case scenario is a nightmare. And when your best-case scenario is a nightmare, that's when you say, hey, not worth it. I, the other day, started looking for tickets because the baseball season's starting soon, and I want to see when the Red Sox come to either Anaheim or to Dodger Stadium because I live here in the Los Angeles area. And I was looking for tickets, found some, and I'm going to go. And you know how I did it? I used Gametime. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy shows, theater events, anything like that near you. With killer last-minute deals and all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And they are obsessed with finding ways to save you money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. It's the best way to get those last-minute seats. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on football, basketball, hockey, concerts, you name it. With zone deals, you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you always get the best price. If you find the same tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Stumbled on that. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. It's late, folks. Hey, this is a quick reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV's channel app. Sorry, I stumbled over a little bit of that, but what are you going to do? And yeah, that's Justin Lamas is coming in. He's a big Dodger fan. He says, dude's going to have a 4.50 ERA if he pitches and a massive distraction and the cancer to the dressing room. Yeah. It's not worth it. It's just not there. There's no metric where it's worth it. Absolutely none. Hey, we talked about the Rendon situation, and a lot of people commented, and I'm just going to go through a few of the responses that I got. Silente754 says, I feel like I understand Rendon somewhat. I have a job where maybe not people who want to jump to. There are plenty of people that would dream of doing it. And I'm not a pro baseball player, but I understand prioritizing family over work. Yeah. I agree. Big John 08865 says Rendon saying that reminds him of Richard Sherman at the Super Bowl media. They say, I'm just here so I won't be fined. Yeah, we get mad when players give us boring answers. Then we get mad when they give us more honest answers. Rise Wayburn 6415 on YouTube says, not liking your job is normal, but this isn't the same. If you make it clear you don't care about entertaining the people and are only there for money, then those people have the right to be upset. I understand that. I think the main issue is the fact that he hasn't been playing. I think that if he was playing and said, I'm just doing this for the money, I think most people would just sort of shrug and say, okay. John 042, okay, this is one I had an issue with. John 042, who listens to the show a lot, he's a great listener. He said 90% of people here love baseball. I hope 100 people listening to this love baseball and would play it for free or a small sum if possible. Then you have a guy with more talent than all of us talking like this. It's going to PISS people off. I'd kill for this game, be able to play for a living, and he doesn't seem to be able to appreciate it. He is clearly just a jackass who doesn't give a blank about what people think. Well, okay. Because he has made his bread and collecting another 80 regardless of what he says. I'm taking issue on one part of that. The idea of people would play it for free or a small sum. They would for a little bit. They would for a tiny little bit. Maybe a week or two. Maybe a season. But eventually, the physical grind of the game and being a ball player will get to you a little bit. And you'd be like, oh, man, this is something. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of work to stay at this level. And then all those years in the minor leagues where you're grinding it out. And then all these, when you finally get to the major leagues, you have to keep at this super high level because if you slip for even a second, your career could be over like that. And then you look around and you see what other people are making and you see how much money the owners are making. You're not going to say, I'll play this for nothing. Nope. You eventually will say, I need to be paid. It's the genius of the line from Jerry Maguire. Someone say, show me the money. You will say, I've gotten to this point and I'm worth this. I've earned this, seeing all the money that's coming through. And I understand if you're working at a tough job that doesn't pay a lot of money. Hey, your pal Sully, that's me. I'm a public school special education teacher. I work with kids. Some of them are nonverbal. And guess what? I don't get paid Anthony Rendon money. I get it. I get that it's not the same thing. But the idea that you'll just do it for nothing, do you want? I buy. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. So, but I do understand it's completely tone deaf. Just say the boring answers. Just say the whole, I just want to help the team out. And hey, we've talked about Bauer. We've talked about Rendon. We come back for the final segment. Let's end this show positively, shall we? Let's end this show talking about someone who's retiring, who's worth a salute. It is now the time of the year. The baseball season is going to be starting soon. Basketball is fully ablaze, and that means it's time to head over to our friends at FanDuel. Now, right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the National Basketball Association. And one more time, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local extras Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I'll tell you something. Doing it live this late at night, free Fire TV channel app. That's a mouthful. That's a real mouthful. Hey, Eric Hosmer is retiring. And Eric Hosmer was a touted prospect, came up to the Royals organization when the Royals were the definition of a completely moribund franchise. Absolutely dead from the neck up franchise who would get wonderful players and just ship them off. And there was a real sort of tragic element to the Royals, I felt, because they were a team that were there that were created essentially to replace the A's after the A's left Kansas City after the 1967 season. And they were founded by Ewing Kauffman, who Kauffman Stadium is named after, and he wanted to put a winner in Kansas City, and he spent his money. And there's a period of time where the Royals were one of the big market teams. They spent big on players and kept their team together. They signed big free agents, and they had a stretch of time where they were always in the postseason. They were one of the elite teams, and superstars like George Brett and Brett Saberhagen and Bo Jackson all played on the Kansas City Royals. They were all teammates. When Kauffman died, the Royals just essentially became a farm team. For decades, not only were the Royals not competitive, they would go like decades where they would only have one winning season. And the Royals put together a team in the mid-2010s by drafting and making smart trades, whether it was drafting Hosmer or Gordon or pulling off the trade that trade away Greinke, but bringing in the likes of Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar. And for a brief window of time, they became the model of how you build a franchise and take advantage of that window of opportunity. And Eric Hosmer was a key part of that team. He was a dynamite defensive first baseman, had some speed, had some power, and was a keystone for that team that was built upon not huge home run totals, but speed, defense, and an absolutely intensely deep bullpen. If those Royals teams from 2014 and 2015 had a lead in the sixth inning, game over. And they had that wonderful style of offense that they were stealing bases, going first to third on hit, and forcing teams to be back on their heels and ready to make mistakes. Guess what? Hosmer was a key member of that team. And with that, in that 2014-2015, when they went to the World Series in back-to-back years, winning the first World Series in franchise history that was not aided by a Don Denkinger blown call at first, suddenly the Royals got off the schneid. And yes, I know the Royals have had some very bad years and a bunch of 100-loss-win seasons since then, but it has a hell of a less of a sting. Is that a sentence? When you know that those fans experienced back-to-back trips to the World Series, a thrilling World Series, it would turn out to be a loss to San Francisco, but then a 5-game series with the Mets. No, it wasn't a 7-game series, but there were absolute thrillers, 3 thrillers in that game, in that series. And Hosmer was a huge part of it and essentially rescued the franchise. When they're thinking about building a new ballpark downtown, they have the young superstar and Bobby Witt Jr., who they were able to draft because they had some garbage seasons recently, but also the not too long ago memories of a team that was a champion. Hosmer was a key to that. And along the way, he took a dagger and stuck it right in the heart of two gigantic franchises that, let's face it, are still reeling from some of the stuff that he did. In 2014, the Angels were in the postseason. They won the division, and they had essentially, we're going to have home field advantage throughout the American League playoffs. This was Mike Trout's coming out party. And the Angels were started the series at Anaheim. Games 1 and 2 went into extra innings. That's right. With one swing of the bat in game 1 and one swing of the bat in game 2, the Angels could have been up 2-0. They lost the first game in extra innings. Okay, fine. The Royals were on a bit of a roll, especially after that mind-boggling and, for A's fans, gut-wrenching loss to the Royals in the wild card game. Another franchise that Hosmer helped destroy. But in game 2, in extra innings, it was Eric Hosmer who hit a 2-run home run that put the Royals ahead. And with that, the Royals took a 2-0 lead back to Kansas City. Now, granted, game 3, Mike Trout hit the only postseason home run of his career, but the Royals went on to cruise and win game 3 and went on to the next round. The Angels haven't been in the playoffs since. Can you imagine if the Angels had won that series and actually gone on to beat Baltimore, maybe gone on to the World Series? You would have had a Mike Trout World Series. Would that have changed the entire persona, aura of the Angels, instead of being a team that hasn't won a single postseason game since 2009 and had the two best players of baseball as teammates, only to see them not even put a winning product on the field? Could that franchise have a different aura about them if they had won that year? Eric Hosmer helped take that knife and stab him. And then the next year against the Mets, who were looking to be in a situation where they were going to take over the city. They had a great young team, lots of young superstars on the squad. And then they could have been in a position to win that World Series. Game 1 would have meant so much. And Hosmer actually made a key error in that game 1, but he hit the walk-off sacrifice fly in game 1 of the World Series, one where the Mets had a lead in the 9th inning. Stab in the heart. And then Hosmer was there in game 5 as the Mets were trying to stay alive. The great game pitched by Harvey, and the Royals rallied. It's the way they do, going first to third and everything. With one out in the 9th inning, batter and Hosmer was on third. Grounder to the third baseman, Wright, who threw it across the diamond. Hosmer initially held, and then when the ball went to first base, he made a break for home. The throw came home. Now, if Hosmer was thrown out, the game would have been over. The Mets would have won game 5, and the series would have gone back to Kansas City. But because it was such a surprise move, the first baseman made a panic throw back to the catcher. The throw went wild, and then Hosmer came in to score, and the Royals went on to win in extra innings. The Mets have been reeling ever since. Imagine how the Mets' identity would have changed if you had that 2015 World Series title, a more recent title than the Yankees. The Angels and the Mets saw their most recent chances for glory stabbed in the heart by late inning heroics by Eric Hosmer, a man who raised the bar for the franchise of the Royals. Padre fans may not be thrilled with him because he didn't fare too well with the Padres. But one thing I don't think you can ever accuse Eric Hosmer of is not being someone who came through and loved the game. So maybe he's not like Anthony Rendon. But all I know is one franchise looks at him and goes like, oh, man, we had the glory of our times. And the Angels and Mets think, that damn Hosmer. That's a career worth saluting. And takes us to the trivia question. The trivia question being, the last time the Angels won a playoff game was in Game 5 of the 2009 American League Championship Series. What Angels star got on base 4 times in that game, scoring twice and driving in 2 runs. Which Angel star was the last one to deliver with his bat an Angels postseason victory? Put your answers down here on YouTube or at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. I've got nothing more to say about Bauer. I've got nothing more to say about Rendon. I want to talk a lot about all those great free agent signings we're going to see in the next bunch of days. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan, and I'm the host of Locked On MLB. Please call me Sully.